I'm Julie Alexandria.
And I'm Jennifer Mercedes.
Between the two of us, we have over 2 decades of experience working in professional sports.
We're telling the stories of women who are at the top of their game in sports and business.
Welcome
to the Locker Room.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Locker Room Talk. I'm Julie Alexandria here with Jennifer Mercedes, and it is our pleasure to welcome to the show today our guest, Miss Cynthia Medina Carson. Cynthia is the CEO of Wager, a salary conversation service. She's a transparency maven, a career strategist, and organizational growth expert. Welcome, Cynthia. It's so good to have you here in the locker room. How are you?
I'm great. So happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, we're going to start with a quick fire round. We want to get to know you a little bit. So answer in the quickest way possible. The first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Bitcoin or Dogecoin?
NFTs.
Mets or Yankees?
Later, yeah. We actually invested in a little company, but we can talk about that later.
Mets or Yankees?
Never Yankees. Anyone but Yankees. Red Sox preferably. Yeah.
Favorite childhood TV show?
Okay. The A-Team or MacGyver?
The campus at Georgetown or the campus at Harvard?
Complicated, but I'll say Georgetown.
She went to both, by the way.
Yeah.
Central Park or Prospect Park?
Prospect, if I have to, because it's close. No subways.
Unpaid internships, good or bad idea?
It's good if you can do it, bad for society.
If you had a chance to travel back in time, which era would you most like to live in?
I've always thought about roaring 20s, flappers, jazz, and boating.
I mean, we're not far from it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. In general, it is taboo to talk about money. And in particular, why is it so hard, statistically speaking, for women especially to talk money?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, it doesn't even matter the age group. It can be in your teens, 20s, 40s, 50s. It's really difficult. And I'll say from my experiences, women just hate making waves. We want to be liked. We want to make that good first impression. And we think pushing on HR and our managers and supervisors at that moment makes us uncomfortable, makes us look like that woman. But then what happens is we then continue to function like on hope, like that they'll see me work hard, that I'll get the raise if I just put my head down. If I just do the job, I'll get promoted. And that is going to be the problem, right? So if you start off that way, you're never going to get to where you need to be. I focus a lot on the responsibility around responsibility. Like while the world does what it does, which is not always fair, we got to do our part.
I also feel like part of that, and I always say this, Julie and I always have these conversations, even off camera and off of these shows, is that part of it is also we feel like we could be replaced. Whether or not that is the case, it's always that fear of, well, they could probably just hire somebody else if I speak up, right?
Right. So the strategy for that is always being an A player, right? Because when you're an A player, who wants to replace you? And that's a hard part. So we tend to do a little more than everyone else, right, to make sure we stay. But when you're A, like the cost of losing someone, the effort to retrain people, like nobody wants to do that. So I think we have to start owning like the fact that we are good at what we do. And if I walked away, it would be hurtful to them as well, right? And so we have to start owning that.
Yeah, 100% correct. Now, your resume is incredible and has some very impressive titles. How did you find your way into finance, and what the need that you were looking to address by founding Wager?
So, the part of me is I'm first generation, right? And so first generation sometimes comes off like it could be like a hindrance. But the fun part about being first generation is there was no expectations. There was no one telling me what to do. They were just like really happy for me. Like I graduated from high school. Yay. I wasn't pregnant. Yay. There was minimums. So everything else was like a big fun adventure for me. Right. And but also I also knew because there was no safety net, whatever I did, I had to figure out and pay myself. And what I learned through that process was knowing numbers, always knowing just enough numbers to make myself dangerous. Right. So having other people pay for big adventures. Right. So like when I was in the Peace Corps, I could have been a volunteer for education or whatever. I was like, no, I want to be a small business volunteer, be on the numbers side of whatever I did. So having that edge, understanding the money part was always something that was very important to me. So although I could do anything in the world, it was on the money side. Like even when I worked at the Treasury after 9/11, I could have done anything after 9/11 after I got my graduate degree, but I focused on the numbers part, anti-terrorist financing, where's the money flowing? And I think that allowed me to have the life I wanted, but also like know what I had to do to get ahead.
Well, I want to bring sports into the conversation real quick because we do talk a lot of sports industry talk here on Locker Room Talk. One of the biggest conversations in and around the sports industry right now is regarding the pay gap when it comes to women's sports. We're talking on the collegiate level all the way up until the professional level. And as we saw in the Olympics just this past summer, in your opinion, what needs to be addressed? And is there even a clear solution?
So, you know, it doesn't matter the industry, but in terms of sports, I think it's definitely a two-prong, right? It's always a structural, like, what are the big people doing? And then what are us individuals doing, right? And so I think there is a moment right now, specifically in this year after pandemic and social unrest, like if you want to bury your head in the sand and pretend all these changes are not happening, you're going to be seen as big old fat dinosaur, right? And do you want to be the voice of the next generation, or do you want to stay how you are, lose viewership, the demographic changing? Like, are you part of the solution, or just going to sit there and pretend it's not happening? So while, you know, there are pressure points, right? So we have like, it's always for me, almost like asymmetric warfare. Like you have these big people, how do you fight big people when you're just an individual? So structurally, I would say individuals have a voice. We have social media. We have abilities to like put graphics, like this is what I make salaries and this is what men make. You know, we can do small little gestures that have big impact, big conversations in the media. But individually, as sports and individuals and people are members of sports teams, you know, are you making sure in your agents or whomever or however you're working that you're constantly thinking, because it's not just, you know, sports is large, right? It's the media, it's individuals. All of us are part of it in a different way. Are you raising your hand once or 3 times a year, reminding people that you're an A player, the success is also based on my individual worth, and are we sharing in this big pot of pie, you know, as we all grow? And I think as we do well, we have to constantly, as women, raise our hands and make sure we're being seen. Like I advise people every 2 or 3 times a year. Hey, hi boss, hi supervisor, how's it going? Didn't I do great last 3 months? Isn't that amazing? Looking forward to the end of the year. You know, end of the year comes. Hi, I've been reminding you all this year how great I've been. How are we going to share in this pie? You know, and I think that's what individuals can do. And I think we don't put it in our almost like calendar stuff, right? We look back and we're like, oh, you know, what's happened, where we gone? We've lost, you know, we see people next to us making more, doing better. What are we doing as individuals, making sure that we're seen, heard, and move on, and being able to, you know, being okay with the idea of packing up if things aren't going your way.
That is great advice. I know it's something that I have definitely struggled with. And I know many women have, especially women of color. It is so hard to advocate for yourself. I mean, at many points, I'm like, thank God I have an agent and that's who I pay, because having to do it by myself, sometimes it's like, oh, you're going to come off as arrogant and cocky, and you don't want that either. But like I say, I know I'm really good at my job.
No, right. And I think, so the minute we're confident in what we bring, we can speak a little better, stay up a little higher, fight a little more. And I think it does start with that confidence piece. You gotta, you know, like stand up straight or be like, hey, and this is not a bad thing. All I'm saying, where are we? Are we on the same place? Are you taking me to the same place you're going? And if you don't want to do that, cool. I need to find someone else to do that with me.
Mm-hmm. But I think what you mentioned in the beginning of this interview, which was the not wanting to make waves, I identify with that so much. That speaks to my heart, because I feel that way in my personal life. I feel that way in my professional life. And I think there is this sort of blanket, ubiquitous feeling of you are always replaceable, as Jen said, especially in the entertainment industry. And I think it's that way because it's happened. It's happened to me personally, where they said, you know what, at this point, we don't put emphasis on the work. It's just a look, and we need to check a box when it comes to diversity, being seen as a woman on the broadcast, which for a long time, that's what it was. And so they felt they could get anybody to fill that specific role. And I think that's where we get that feeling, is once it happens to you, no matter how good you are at your role, if it happens to you, that always sticks with you.
It's devastating. It's devastating, right? But we also have to learn to roll with the punches. If someone's not going to be in our space, do we create our own space? I think when I think about the big trajectory is, are we thinking ahead enough about creating our own space as opposed to fitting into the spaces that exist, right? So if you're going to continually fit into the spaces that exist, then those are the rules. But how do we start figuring out what our own rules are, right? And though I made a joke about NFT earlier, but I have a friend of mine, Chantel Martin, she's an artist. And it's a new way of artists kind of like sharing in the profit of like creating their own spaces as opposed to doing the way the gallery owners doing the way to. So as we think about next generation workforce, how are we thinking about the new, like, you guys have this show, you're doing this. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, how are you making your own power plays? Like, F that, like, F these people, I'm going to make my own power play. And we just have to be ready and engaged, have your resume, have everything ready for the possibility of the next thing so we don't get stuck.
Yeah, luck is always just being prepared when the opportunity presents itself. Now, when it comes to the sports industry, women are often in the minority, whether it be working for a team or a network. What are some tips that you would advise women working in male-dominated fields to use when it comes to negotiating?
Right, so we start off being great at what you do. And I just think and I say that over and over because it's really hard to be a C minus B plus and be like demanding, right? So once you start there, you also have to realize where we are right now. After the past, 18 months, the clarity that the next generation workforce looks different, will act different, all right? Will be people of color, will be women. And if boardrooms have had to change quickly, right? They have had to make, the faces of brands, the messaging, everyone's on. So you know what? Use that to your advantage. And the way people have used always is there to your advantage. I didn't have the network. I created my own network, right? So the reality is we need women in the workforce. There are actually structural policy changes where women have to be on boards, women have to be participating, if you're not paying attention. But it's not just that, as everyone's paying attention, and do you want to lose viewership? Are people like, ooh, that person, that's kind of nasty? Or when they see 10 men talking and one woman there, the visual is no longer okay. So you have to be prepared to change. So I'm saying as an individual, say, listen, I'm doing great here. I'm one of, one woman out of like the 20 men here. Do you want to keep me? I think I'm great. What are you going to do to keep me? There are other people, recruiters, other people, giving me phone calls. Always take the phone calls, by the way. Always be prepared to walk away, but always know your strength. And I think, so use the fact that this moment is a moment where people are paying attention to the distinct qualities that you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well, because of the year that it's been, the past year, almost 2 years that we've been living in, right? It has never been a greater time and a better time to be Black, to be Latina, to be women of color, to be Asian, Asian American, right? And so I've been saying it from the beginning. I'm like, it is such a good time to check that box when you're applying, right? Like, because they want to hire that. But like you said, you also need to be good at what you do, because like, that's not going to be the only thing that gets you that job. It's just going to give you the edge. And for a long time too, when we're talking about diversity in those rooms, white women were seen as diversity, right? Yeah. Now that has changed, and it's going to continue to change. I'm so happy that it's not just white women when we talk about diversity in a room. Now it's women of color, women, trans women, it now it's all shades and all types of women that are also considered diverse and being taken into account. So I'm like, I have my notebook here, and I just because I'm on the show, but I'm taking mental notes because it's so important. These conversations are so important. They're so empowering, because I know that there's going to be somebody out there who's in a position where they feel like they need to speak up, and this is going to give them that push.
Yeah, and I want to play. It's not just people want to see Black people and Latino people. It's the reality of a business. Like your viewership is changing. Like people who are buying your products are changing. So if you think you don't have to change, you will lose. I just want to be very clear. The $1 trillion industry that is out there, that is not sports and merchandising and online products and whatever. Like, who do you think is buying this? And we just saw the census, 2020 census. The 50% of the population now, the shrinking population of some and the growth of the other, like paying attention. So this is not like just, it may feel like, should I do that? It's like, yes, you should. And there's a bigger reason for that.
Absolutely. And those are amazing trend lines, as you both pointed out. What is the best piece of advice that you were ever given on your journey that you take with you and that you implement into your own life?
Well, this actually feels off track, but it's not. And when I was in high school, I had a great teacher who told me, "Hey, you want to try out for tennis?" And I was like, "Sure." He's like, "No, it's important. You need to be in all the spaces. This is an easy thing for you to do. It's a racket and sneakers. I'll get you the racket, I'll get you sneakers. But once you're in there, all over the world, you can play this game. You'll be in any room. Anyone will play tennis." And I remember it seemed something small, but the fact that I became anyone and I could be anyone. I wasn't me, the woman. I have access to other things and be part of a bigger picture was really a weird message that stayed with me forever. So I've never felt that I didn't belong in a room. I sometimes felt maybe people weren't ready for me to be in the room, but I always felt like I should have belonged.
That is a great piece of advice. And one thing before we let you go, you talked about with us before we started how the pandemic changed the clientele that you have right now. Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, past few years since, when I started Wager, it was for me, it was like, why aren't people talking about money? I don't understand. We can all talk. What's the deal? Like, growing up with nothing, having a bunch, I was like, I'll talk about it. I'll tell you. So, it was never, but I noticed that my demographic was, for the past couple of years, has been majority, say 80% white, mostly white women, 7% women, 30% men, a few percent, my 15% was people of color. July, like June and July, pandemic, protests, Brooklyn, within 30 days, 60 days, it flipped and it was 80% Black women. Not Latina yet, they came after, but it was like, I just feel like Black women they got to the edge of, I am done. I've been hearing you talk about this, Cindy, friends of friends. I'm ready. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to say. I am over it. And I was like, yes, and it was really a beautiful trajectory this past year for me. I put a bunch of stuff away that I was like, yeah, this is fun, to oh, this is what I'm doing right now. This is what, this moment has called for me to step up and tell people, say this, do this, forget that, move away from that. And I've been able to serve a lot of good executive on their way up, like women a year ago who would never thought they would be with, now are I'll say, like Tesla and another group, people are fighting for women. And I'm like, yes, this is where, and I did nothing, right? And this is part of it. We all can do all the things. There's nothing I'm saying differently. People are also listening. It's just we're listening. We know what we're supposed to do. Say these things, salary, ask these, we see that, we read it, but are we doing it? Are we practicing? And are we ready to be a little uncomfortable, embarrassed? So for me, this year has been be embarrassed, 10, 15, 20 minutes a year. Be embarrassed by asking for more. Be embarrassed by asking for the next promotion. Just get uncomfortable. And then after that, it'll always be easier. So that has been, it's been a wonderful year for me for that. And for me too, that made me feel like I got a stronger voice. They have a stronger voice, and it's been like a cycle for us,
Okay, I just have a question because you brought something up in my mind that reminds me of a story from a very prominent network in the entertainment industry. Do you believe that the squeaky wheel gets the oil? Like that sort of, phrase.
Do you know, I actually typed that this morning because I typed, and I will show you, because I'm the one thing about my husband is can you lie a little more? I was like, no, I don't know how to lie. So, but I actually typed that today. We have to be, and it's like squeaky, it's like the confident wheel, the assertive wheel, the I know my worth wheel, right? And if you just say it 3 or 4 times a year, just reminding you, remember who I am, remember what I do. Your success is based on my success. If the 10 of us are successful, you as a manager is successful, don't forget that. And there's nothing wrong with doing it in a very humble way, if you want, but a very I know my worth way, right? So yes, squeaky wheel 3 or 4 times a year, just raise your hand, remind everyone what you've done.
Yeah. And, it's funny. My agent told me, I had a conversation with her, and she's like, one of the things that we also have to remember that, getting positive feedback is not the only way to reward your employees, right? That it's great to hear, oh, you're doing so good. Thank you so much. You're so good at your job. No. But show me that in my paycheck. And
that does not pay the bills. I was like, a compliment did not pay my rent. I was like, what pays my rent? Money, we have to be okay. Oh, this is the other thing. I was talking to this person, sorry. And she was like, I don't know. And, they're treating me this way. And I was just like, okay, what do you want? She goes, what do you mean? I was like, you want a lot of money? She goes, well, no. 15 minutes into the conversation, I was like, well, okay, now that we've talked about that, do you want money? She's like, well, yes. I was like, okay. So if you want, now we have a better starting point. You want to make money. How much? Do you want 250, 300? She's like, I was like, no, tell me what you want. Cause you're not going to get there if you don't know where you're going. You know, like you're going to land something else. You don't accidentally become a millionaire. You don't accidentally become $500,000. You just don't accidentally own a house. You got to plan for it. So when I think about college, you know, like when people ask college people, you know, students, what do you want to be in life? I feel like, what kind of life do you want? Do you want a life where you don't worry about, tell me what the life looks like and then work backwards, as opposed to because what you want doesn't like say anything, which goes back to finances as well. Okay. We can talk for a while.
We can talk to you all day. This is like a master class.
Yes, it is. This is totally like a master class. It's so good. Like I said, there are people out there who are watching, women out there who are watching, and men at the same time, you know, who are watching this and like, oh my God, I can do it. And that's what we're here to do. I mean, Locker Room Talk, we started it to give women a platform to, you know, share who they are, but also to give these nuggets. And when we leave these conversations, Julie and I was like, oh my God, that was so good. Like we learned so much. So thank you.
But I mean, I know the how hard it is to start something on your own, honestly. So I really, and I'm not saying, I thank you both for doing this, because this is hard. And I know it's hard because I've done it. Right? To be the first one to do things is always a little weird. A lot of why are you doing? And now, you know, it makes sense. And I think we just have to keep doing that so that we can, this makes sense so that people hear us, and then it makes, you know, and we continue that. Yeah.
Yeah. And our plan is to keep on doing it until we gain the attention of a big brand, like you said, and then they start to pay attention and they say, we want to buy into that demographic. We want this audience. We are interested in having this as a piece to what we are about. And I feel like the industry needs to catch up with that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, how many women love, I mean, I will watch anything. I would literally watch anything under the sun, talk about any of the things and love it, you know, but sometimes I don't feel like people speak to me. They don't realize it, right? And so having these voices, platforms are important. They don't realize who's out there. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, like, we could talk forever about this, but I mean, one of our first episodes was with NJ Acosta, and I had a male friend text me as he was listening to it, and he was like, oh my God, I relate to her. I'm a man and I relate to everything that she is saying because he was in the same field. And so everything like that you're saying, everything that we're saying, like you said, like that is our goal, is to be able to speak to people, to a specific group of people that have never felt like they could hear themselves or see themselves. And then women like us, like Julie and like you, right? I know that there's some Latinas out there who are like, oh, so I can get into finance? I can make a lot of money and be in like finance. What? I'm really good with numbers. I am not, but I know there are a lot of people out there.
You just have to be enough to be dangerous, and that's what I'm saying. Enough to read the contract, enough to, you know what I mean? We just need enough at least. Don't feel like you need all numbers, just enough that you don't be left behind. You know, that's what I always say to people.
Yeah, and not worry so much about being liked.
Okay, can we just talk about how much we can be liked? But this is not mutually exclusive for being respected and a little like, you know, and I think we think the like is something and it's not. It's actually nothing, right? Bring the donuts on Friday. Everyone likes you, but then like you have a miserable time. You can't pay. Like we got to do both. I'm sorry, you were going to say?
You're so no. It's so funny that you said this, Julie, and I'm sorry that Maria, one of our other technical directors, isn't on this video because she's new to the company, and so she went out with me to Colorado for the All-Star game. And when I'm working, I'm very direct. Like I know what I want, what I need, and I'm like very much focused on this is what we need to do. I need this, I need this, I need this, and I'm not really worried about can you please do this for me? You know, like, no, like this is what I need. And I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I warned her. I'm like, I'm sorry if I come off like really strong because we're working and this is just, you know, the way that I'm used to working. And she's like, no, oh my God, I appreciate it. Please tell me exactly what you need. And like, this is what we're here to do. We're here to work. I don't need you to, you know, have the pleasantries with me. And I so appreciated that because I know there have been times when I've done it with men and they kind of side-eye me like, who's this chick think she is, you know? And so, yes, it's so important to forget about needing to be liked because the time will come. The people who know you are the people who matter.
And they'll want to work with you. So let me be very clear. The better you are at your job, the more you can be a leader, the more you can direct people, people will follow, because people also want a leader. You're all nice and cute and whatever, and like a disorganized mess, it's meaningless, you know? And then at some point people will be like, no, she actually, this is what she, and I, you know, I've had people work for me or it's like, I like that you just like boom, boom, boom. I always know where you stand. There's no fear. And you actually, I apologize when I'm wrong. It's also the other side, like, oh, I'm sorry, did I do, okay, I hear, I learn, but it's, you know, it's like the directness is fine. And you know what, your tribe will come. Like your tribe will start showing up for you if you show up like that.
Absolutely. I love that. Oh my goodness.
Cynthia, I told you we could talk about this forever.
Seriously, yeah. We could just keep on going. Like,
let's do this next time. We'll have another. There's more time in the world.
Please, yes.
You are wonderful. Where can people find out about Wager, and where can they get more information about having those conversations?
So, you know, we wager, WEWAGER.co, wewager.co. Me, Cynthia at We Wager as well. And I'm working on a few things and I'm going to get some writing out, you know, and I think I think the nice thing about the pandemic, it's made me strengthen. My tribe has showed up and I know what I'm supposed to do now. Before, you know, I was doing it for everyone. I think I'm finding who I'm supposed to do it for, which has been really powerful and very like a focused. So thank you. Find me, email me. But I also want to thank you guys for allowing me to do this, because this will make me even better. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you everybody for checking out another episode of Locker Room Talk. For Jennifer Mercedes, I'm Julie Alexandria. We'll see you next time.
These men and women that are out here taking the field, doing what they love to do, they're more than athletes. And so again, to have that platform, to be able to just be like, hey, this is what's going on. Y'all need to take a look at it. It's powerful.